Hey there viewers, thank you for tuning into Supermariodiagnostics once again. Today we are working on a 2002 Lexus SC430. Came from another shop and they put a starter in the vehicle. So obviously they had a no crank concern. And ever since that, it's been having a misfire. So I'm pretty sure the starter's on the bottom on these. I was able to recreate the symptom. When it gets hot, has an intermittent misfire. And I went ahead and pulled codes. I'm gonna start the engine. 0 codes, fellas. 0 codes. Now, we can go to EOBD and see if there's any mode 6 data that we can use, or any live data that we can use as well. Now, I don't feel it that much, but every now and then I'll get a little bit of a misfire. Let me see if I can find our mode 6. And that's not really going to help us much. Anyway, we have other codes and other systems, but that's not the priority. They did disconnect the battery, so they do have a 0-point calibration undone. Very common when you disconnect the battery on these. Let's see if there's any misfire data. I do apologize for the noise in the background. We got misfire count data. Right now, I don't see anything. Let me go ahead and put it in reverse. Maybe it has a problem identifying misfires, but we got a 1-cylinder misfire on number 6, and it looks like it reset on us. So this might be a like a 10-second timer. I did let it cool down a bit. Whoa, I felt a couple there. We got a couple there, right? So customer brought it to us for us to troubleshoot. Usually I do a relative compression test, a clear flood, but this is intermittent. It doesn't always happen. We can try. I'm gonna hold down the gas pedal all the way. I don't think this one has clear flood if I remember correctly, but we're gonna try. Nope, it does not. We're gonna try one more time because sometimes they don't register that first time. It cranked pretty good, but we do not have clear flood going for us. So we do see a number 6 misfire. I didn't see any in any other ones. We're gonna start this process off. Since our clear flood is a problem, we should probably start with secondary ignition just to play safe, because since it's intermittent, it tends to be an ignition misfire. Tends to be, usually. So we're gonna go back to misfire. There we go. It was already populated. I'm gonna put it in reverse. Maybe it helps identify the misfire, or maybe it warms it up a little more. But it is very intermittent. There it goes. I felt something there. There it goes. Registered as 3. I got nothing else in any other cylinder. We're kind of hoping at this point that the engine computer is identifying the correct cylinder. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the scan tool. We're gonna go up to the coil and do some secondary ignition testing. From there on, we may need to look into the injection. These have a 4-wire coil system, and they have a 5-volt command signal, and they also have a confirmation signal. So if the ECM decided to drop out the signal to any coil, we should see that on the confirmation signal. But let's not jump the gun. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have good spark. We don't see high secondary resistance or any of that stuff. All right, so we got all data pulled up according to VIN as per usual, and I want to find out what's our number 1 cylinder. Usually I could type in number 1 and it actually populates there because I use that so many times. Cylinder identification. We want to find out where's number 6. Look at our front of vehicle. Looks like our passenger side, the 3rd one down, that's going to be our number 6. So that's good information to have. That's where we're gonna focus. And let me see if this is the 4-wire type, just real quick, just to make sure that I'm not like mistaken on this. I'm gonna press Control F to find, press coil. And nothing for, let's see if it ignition. I was trying to use the find feature just to make it simpler, but I guess that's not gonna be happening. They call it ignition coil and igniter. So yeah, we have four wire coils here. There's a smart coil, that means the transistor is inside, and the command is a 5-volt command. It is not a primary ignition waveform. We're not gonna get a primary ignition waveform out of this. So, and I heard it misfire. I have it running so that it could get hot. I heard it misfire. We're gonna set the camera up at the vehicle with the scan tool and see if we can get some live data to show the live misfire while we keep an eye on number 6, secondary ignition, using the ignition tool that we always use. So we've got both of them set up. We've got the ignition analyzer and the scan tool in order to see live data. And I'm gonna keep my body up against the vehicle to kind of feel for a misfire. We may be able to hear it, maybe not. And I hope this is visible enough for you guys. Let me see. Put that right there. And zoom in for you guys. Like I said, this is intermittent. Makes all kinds of testing a bit more difficult. It's a more complex troubleshooting process at this point because it doesn't always happen. So that's the weird part of this whole thing. How do we do an RC test, a relative compression test, or even a regular compression test, or a leak down, or anything? How do we do anything to find this misfire? All we can do is rely on live data and a scope at this point to see if we see any high resistance, high secondary resistance. We do hear a bit of a tick. I do hear a bit of a tick going on, so that may be a factor, but I don't want to jump the gun. We want to rule out the easy stuff first, and this is as easy as it gets. I don't know if anybody would think that this is a difficult thing to do, but we want to catch it in the act, see if it has, oh, there it did. It did it, and it did not have high secondary resistance. We would have seen a very shortened amount of burn time and a downward slope from the firing line to the end of the burn line, which we did not see. We saw 3 misfires on scan data and not much going on the secondary ignition system. So I do not suspect that this is an ignition issue at this point. I did not see a lean condition either, so that kind of steers me away from the injection, but we can scope that to make sure that the injector is opening and closing the way that it should. But that doesn't actually rule out a injector mechanical issue, like a restriction. It's very rare for it to happen like that very fast and then go away, an injector, but not on a GDI. But this is not a GDI. This is also port injected, so it's not like we have caked up intake valves either. So it's gonna be very hard to catch one in the act. I think we ruled out ignition because I saw it clear as day. It did not have high secondary resistance or short. Let's see if we can catch it in the act one more time. It'd be nice to. Actually, I got my brother here. Martin, hey, can you put it in drive, please? My brother's gonna jump in and put it in drive, see if it could help us. He's got it in drive now. People don't realize how hard it is to pinpoint the root cause of a intermittent misfire, especially one like this that only happen like once every 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, or even 10 minutes or more. Can't you just look at the car? That's what they always say. Can't you just look at the car? Put it in reverse? Yeah, it doesn't feel like acting up right now, so. A little bit of power brake? Sure. To be honest, it was much worse before I started filming. I think I'm gonna go ahead and set up the injection one as well. So we've got all three here. Scan tool, live data, the injection, and ignition. We can see a good firing line. We got that little pin tool. That means that injector is closing as it should. If you don't see that, more than likely it is not either not closing as it should or not even opening so that it can close. So we're gonna see if we can catch anything in the act. I'm already steering away from ignition. I would like to see if our injector is somehow not firing at any point or lacking a command. We may have to revisit this one. I'm gonna have to let it cool down and get it. It might be in a certain temperature range. I'm gonna have to let it cool down and come back to this one, and while I work on some other stuff for now. But it's not acting up right now, and there's not really much I can do if it doesn't act up. We did see it on camera acting up, but right now I cannot recreate the symptom. So how am I supposed to fix something if I cannot recreate the symptom, right? So I'm gonna turn this off for now and get back to it pretty soon. There was something there, and we did not drop out any injection, so that's good. We maintained a command throughout the misfire. Now I just want to make sure it's actually opening and closing every time. There we got a little something, and I did not see any discrepancy with the pinto hump at all. So it looks like we may be okay injection wise. We may need to look further into this mechanically and see what's going on. So I think I'm gonna put a transducer into the cylinder and see if we can catch it in the act. Obviously, when we put a transducer in the cylinder, we're gonna have to disable spark and injection just to get a view as to what's going on in that cylinder. Maybe it'll provide us with more information. All right, so we have our transducer connected. We're gonna set our scope up real quick. We got WPS 500X range 1. All right, we got our scope set up. I'm gonna go ahead and start this vehicle, and we're gonna keep an eye on the scope. And I may have forgotten to disconnect the injector. Let me go ahead and disconnect it now. Okay, there's disconnected. And I already see something I don't like on the waveform. It's kind of a big deal. And I don't know how we would get this without a scope. Let me see if I can get it to act up one more time in the scope capture, because I see one anomaly, one big one. And it was very hard to get this thing to act up, so it may not act up for a while, but I did see something I didn't like there that should not be happening. Just gonna let it run a little bit longer. Let's see if it does it again. But it shouldn't happen at all, truth be told. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this engine. And if I think I saw what I think I saw, then it's not looking good for this vehicle mechanically. Let's take a look at this waveform. So I see something right here. Right there, you see that? We got a pretty sizable drop. We have an average of about, let's say, 80 PSI running, and then it drops to about 62 PSI. It drops about 16 PSI. And let's see if we can get a closer look at this right here. Let me clean this up a little bit. We're gonna put some filtering. We can see, I'm gonna use this as like a ruler. We can see that on the compression event, the power stroke of a normal 80 PSI running compression This is where we are, a negative 9.5 psi. But then when we go over here where it did have a 16 psi lower compression, we do see a bit of a drop in vacuum, a lower vacuum level, about a psi difference almost. Basically, when a cylinder compresses air and there's any kind of a leak, that air mass comes out of the cylinder upon compression, and then when the piston comes back down, it goes past the vacuum level that it came in with and then drops even lower, right? So we can see our vacuum level up here. It is right here. That's where the intake valve, where I would imagine the intake valve is closing right before the compression event. And then we come back over here and the vacuum level is lower than how it started, right? So that looks to me, if you look at this one, let's see if we could find another. That seems to be the case a lot actually, but some way or somehow, if we look at this, the ones before that have 80 psi, we have a higher vacuum level than what we end up with as well, even though this is at about 80 psi. So that's a good compression event. Well, you know, relatively speaking, that's a good compression event, but that's a pretty sizable difference. Look at this one. This was way worse. I didn't even see that at first. Maybe my eyes played tricks on me because I noted a different one. I noted this one, but I did not see this one. Look at the size, the difference in compression between these two. If this is not a mechanical issue, I don't know what is. That is extremely obvious. Is about a 40 psi difference. How are you going to catch that with a compression test? How are you going to catch that with a leak down test? You're not. And this is a leak for sure, because look at the size, look at where the average vacuum level is. You can see the intake stroke, induction stroke, induction stroke, induction stroke, induction stroke. And then you can see this pretty big expansion void, right? That's a pretty sizable expansion void compared to the rest. Of course, there's no perfect cylinder, right? There's always going to be some kind of loss, but that's a pretty sizable one right there. Now, where is it coming from? I couldn't tell you, but what I can tell you is that we got a nice little nose, right? We got a nice little pinto. I don't know what you could call it. This edge right here comes up. This one does not come up. It's like it's missing, right? And then it comes up again. But for some reason, this low compression event, it's like tapered off. See? We got a good compression event followed by an exhaust, the end of the exhaust stroke that has like a bit of a rise, and then we have this one that does not. So there's a quantifiable difference here. There's a discrepancy here. There's something that we could present to the customer. Hey, listen, you have an extremely intermittent misfire, and it's mechanical. Something mechanical is happening, and I'd be lying if I told you what it was. There's no way I could tell you based on this waveform. There are some people who are much better than this than I am, and they could probably tell you. But the fact that it's intermittent, if it was a valve seating issue, I would think that the peak compressions would do like a wavy pattern, right? You would have, because as the valve spins, it's seating and unseating itself. And it's sealing and then leaking as it rotates. But the fact that it happens one time really, really fast, and then the rest are good, makes me think that we got ourselves a lifter issue. Some kind of a lifter issue. I don't know if these are hydraulic lifters or if they are, like Honda style that you do valve adjustments on, but one thing I can tell you for sure is that if it happens that fast on one compression stroke and then it comes right back on, I can't help but think that this is a lifter issue. Which one, intake or exhaust, I couldn't tell you. I would have to really start thinking about that stuff, and I've been out of practice for some time now, honestly. I've been way out of practice. You know, we're supposed to have the exhaust stroke, then the intake valve. There's supposed to be overlap here. The intake valve is supposed to open, and then the exhaust valve closes over here. So, could it be a leaking intake valve? Thanks to a bad lifter? I couldn't tell you, but that's where I'm at. What else can I do to prove it? I can't do anything else without disassembling to prove that this is a mechanical issue. Yes, we heard a noise, but it's not misfiring at all times. I know somebody's gonna say, oh yeah, you can hear the noise, you can hear the lifter. It's not leaking all the time. Look at the waveform. It is not leaking all the time. It is leaking once in a blue moon, literally. Once in a blue moon. It is doing it. We've got some discrepancy right here. Let me see. Let me take a look at that real quick as well. See if we see anything there. So we can see our average expansion void. Yeah, nothing too crazy that we can see there. We do see a bit of a loss in compression, but nothing really stands out. And this is really hard because how do you tell the customer, hey, we got it to act up one time, and we believe it's a mechanical issue? It's going to be a hard sell. I don't care who it is, who's the salesman, who's the customer. It's going to be a hard sell to tell the customer that, hey, we got to rip open your engine and replace these lifters because we found one anomaly. It is not supposed to do that. Anybody who says, oh no, I mean, one time is fine, right? No, it's a misfire concern. It's an intermittent misfire concern. And look at the drop, the 40 PSI drop in compression. It is not normal, and it is obviously a leak, right? It is obviously a leak. We can rule out a stuck closed anything. A stuck closed exhaust valve would not result in a leak. A stuck closed intake valve would not result in this leak right here, this right here. A valve lash issue would be more consistent. It wouldn't happen from one compression event to the next. Everything points to a lifter. Everything. So I'm sticking to my guns on that one. I think this is a lifter issue, and I believe it may be an intake lifter issue because of the missing spike here. If it was leaking, it's getting some kind of access to the intake port, right? And the intake manifold acts like a vacuum reservoir. It is a vacuum reservoir. That's why when we see the intake valve open, it just drops. But if it was leaking a little bit, it would prevent that little pressure rise. In my mind, I could be totally wrong. Leave a comment in the comment section. How would you have pinpointed this without a scope and a transducer? I would love to know. And without disassembling. Because look, this is all that we have disassembled. This is actually everything that's been disassembled. A coil and a spark plug. That's it. So if you have any tips you want to throw in the comment section as to how to pinpoint a lifter issue that misfires once in a blue moon without disassembling anything more than what we did here, please let me know. But right now we've justified further disassembly and testing. We've proven it. We've got evidence to believe that there's an issue here. All I have to do is hit the save button before I forget. Present it to the customer and see what they would like to do. This is another shop. We don't know what they're gonna do. And obviously, this is another crucial point to this video. The shop did a starter, and ever since, they got a mechanical issue. There's no chance that a starter job is gonna cause this. And how do you know it wasn't there before? Well, it wasn't running because it needed a starter, right? So if the public is watching this, you go to a shop with a non-cranking engine, we're gonna probably give you a disclaimer. Hey, we don't know how this thing's gonna run. And I know that every customer's the same. They're like, it ran perfectly. It ran perfectly before this. All it does is doesn't crank, which is complete BS because honestly, more times than not, there's other problems with the car. The car has other underlying issues. And the shop has to take the heat just because they did a starter. So I'm glad we can provide this evidence and prove to them that there's no way that a starter job can do something like this. Ever since you did this, it started misfiring. So that's one for the books right there, where the public is just wrongfully saying, hey, ever since you, I'm not saying that that's what happened in this case, but that's how the RO was written. Ever since they did the starter, it's misfiring. So how can we know it was misfiring before? We can't prove anything because it wasn't running. Didn't start. So that's where we have to kind of cover our asses, right? Document everything and prove to the customer that, hey, we're not at fault. And if we're not at fault, we shouldn't need it. You know, a lot of shops are eating repairs, subsidizing repairs. And I know we got to keep customers happy, but like within reason. Anyway, that's it for my rant. I'm going to present my findings to the customer and see what they want to do with this thing. So the customer, the actual customer of the vehicle, not the shop that it came from, decided not to move forward with it and took the vehicle. And that's that. I think the diag still applies. There's still a lot of good stuff in there. And then this also shows the importance of documentation and, well, ever since you and all that good stuff, you know, that's something we deal with all the time. I'm going to still post the video because I still think there's a lot of valuable information in it. And it may help somebody out in the near future. So thank you all for taking the time to watch. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Take care.